Do you want to wield a bow with the skill of Legolas? Do you want to empower your arrows with magic? Or do you just want to do over 100 points of damage with a single shot? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then this is the Baldur's Gate 3 build for you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy your time in Min-Max's paradise. For this build, we'll take 11 levels in Fighter, with a 1 level dip into Warlock. For race, I would recommend either Wood Elf or Wood Half Elf in order to pick up Fleet of Foot. This gives you 5 extra feet of movement, which will be helpful in Act 3. More on that later. You also get Stealth proficiency. I personally went with Wood Elf for the Perception proficiency. For class, let's start with Fighter, gaining proficiency in Strength and Constitution saves, as well as all weapons and armor. We also get Second Wind, which gives us a little heal we can use as a bonus action. For fighting style, we want Archery, granting us a +2 to ranged weapon attack rolls, improving our accuracy. For background, I'd recommend Charlatan to get proficiency with Deception and Sleight of Hand, for role-playing and lockpicking respectively. But Guild Artisan or Noble make decent choices if you want to get Persuasion proficiency. For abilities, let's start with 17 in Dex using the +2, 16 in Con using the +1, 14 in Wisdom to protect that important saving throw, and we'll set our Charisma to 10, just so we don't have a negative modifier there for our dialogue options. And we'll keep Strength at 8, along with Intelligence. We will need this character to be intelligent by the time we get our subclass, but there's a remedy for that we'll go over when we get to equipment. And for skills, let's pick up Insight and Intimidation for the social pillar of the game. At level 2, we'll get Action Surge, which gives us an extra action once per short rest. This will be vital to our Nova round. If you've been enjoying this video so far, please give it a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out a lot, so I can give you more of these build guides. Thanks. Now back to the video. At 3rd level, we'll get our subclass, Arcane Archer. This gives us proficiency in Arcana and Nature, as well as Arcane Arrow, which grants us charges that fuel our arcane shots. We'll start off with 4 charges. We also get to pick one of 3 cantrips. Let's go with Guidance, which lets us add a D4 to our ability checks. And lastly, we have our Arcane Shots, which give our ranged weapon attacks different magical effects. Banishing Arrow is an easy first choice, letting us banish the target we hit, subject to a Charisma save. Action economy is king in this game, so removing a serious threat from the battlefield for a bit can help you take out enemies more efficiently. We also want Seeking Arrow, which deals an additional 1d6 force damage and hits the enemy with Fairy Fire if they fail a dexterity save. Plus, like the spell Magic Missile, this arrow always hits, making it a great way to open the round, granting you and your allies advantage against your foe. For the last shot, it's your choice, but I'd avoid Beguiling Arrow, which can charm a creature, preventing it from attacking you. This is great for you, but does nothing for your party members. I'd only pick this option if I were either soloing the game or had, say, a Glamour Bard in the party. Piercing Arrow is a solid AoE option, but it is a bit situational, as it really depends on enemy positioning to get the most out of it. Enfeebling Arrow is a decent choice, dealing 2d6 necrotic and possibly granting the feeble condition on a failed con save, making the enemy's attacks only do half damage. Grasping Arrow does 2d6 poison damage, and, subject to a strength save, also lowers an enemy's speed by 10 feet and causes another 2d6 slashing damage when they move. Solid choice. Bursting Arrow is a fantastic AoE option, dealing an additional 2d6 force damage to the target, and all those within 10 feet, no saving throw required. And finally, Shadow Arrow does an extra 2d6 psychic damage, and if the target fails a wisdom save, it gets blinded, meaning its attack rolls are at disadvantage, its ranged attacks can't go past 10 feet, and all attack rolls against it have advantage. I picked this as it's a great control option, plus we'll need to deal psychic damage by the end of Act 2 anyway, and you'll see why in the next chapter of this video. Just a couple more things to note about Arcane Shots. First, the base DC equals 8 plus our proficiency bonus plus our intelligence modifier. We'll go over how to get our intelligence higher in just a bit. And second, the extra damage dice from these shots don't double on a crit, normally. Just keep that in mind. When we get to level 4, we get a feat. We want Sharpshooter, which removes the attack penalty we normally get from shooting from low ground. We also get the option to reduce our attack roll by 5 to deal 10 extra damage. This pairs nicely with Seeking Arrow, as the advantage we get from that can help our follow-up Sharpshooter shots land. Just note that 10 damage from Sharpshooter does not get added to the damage of Seeking Arrow itself. At level 5, we get Extra Attack, which lets us attack twice with our action. For equipment, our top priority will be getting the Warped Headband of Intellect, which sets our intelligence score to 17, increasing our arcane shot DC. This can be looted off of Lump the Enlightened, who can be found here in the Blighted Village. For armor, let's go for Adamantine Splint Armor. It reduces all incoming damage by 2. It also sends an enemy reeling for 3 turns when they hit us with a melee attack. A reeling enemy has -1 to hit for every turn remaining. And lastly, this armor makes us immune to critical hits. Now, getting this is a little complicated. First, we'll need the Splint Mode Heavy, which can be found here in Grimforge. And Mithril Ore, which can be found here. Then we'll head over to the Adamantine Forge, put the ore in here, the mold in here, and hit this lever to lower the forge. Turn this lava valve to heat the forge and summon its guardian. Eliminate it. Wait till the lava dissipates. Use this lever to drop the hammer. And you'll find your newly crafted armor here. For footwear, let's nab the Disintegrating Nightwalkers. These prevent us from being entangled, enwebbed, or slipping on grease or ice. And they also give us a free casting of Misty Step once per short rest, letting us teleport to higher ground or away from enemies. These can be taken from near, who can be found here in Grimforge, after dealing with the cave-in. Let's don the Gloves of Archery. These let our ranged attacks do an extra 2 damage, and are sold by Grat the Trader, here in the Goblin Camp. For rings, let's start with Caustic Band, which adds 2 acid damage to our weapon attacks. It's sold by Dareth Bonecloak, here in the Myconoid Colony. We'll also want the Strange Conduit Ring, which adds a D4 psychic damage to our weapon attacks when we're concentrating on a spell. The only spell we can concentrate on now is Guidance, so be sure to cast that before starting a fight. You can find this ring inside this chest, in the Inquisitor's Chamber, here in the Githyanki Creche. The first amulet we want is Broodmother's Revenge, which coats our weapons in poison that deals an additional 1d6 poison damage for 2 rounds whenever we are healed. Short rest and second wind count for this, and it works even when we're at full health, so add using either of those to your pre-combat buff routine. This can be looted from Kaga, here in the Emerald Grove. We'll also procure the Amulet of Branding. This lets us brand the weak as a bonus action, letting us make the target vulnerable to bludgeoning, slashing, or piercing damage for the next time they take damage within 3 rounds. We'll of course want to pick piercing, and to get the most out of this, we'll want to take a couple of tadpoles to get Favorable Beginnings, which lets us double our proficiency bonus on the first attack or ability check we make against the target, and Luck of the Far Realms, which lets us turn 1 successful attack into a crit once per long rest. So, brand the weak with your bonus action, and use Luck of the Far Realms on your follow-up attack to deal some big damage. You can only use Brand of the Weak once per day as well, so I'd save this combo for boss battles and use Broodmother's Revenge for every other fight. You can find the Amulet of Branding by looting Ajiknir Jira, here in the Githyanki Creche. We won't use melee weapons with this build, but we'll still want them equipped. In our main hand, let's put Melf's First Staff. It gives us a once a day casting of Melf's Acid Arrow. An okay spell, but the real reason we want this is for the +1 to spell save DC, which does impact our arcane shot DC. Our intelligence won't scale with the Warped Headband of Intellect, so we'll need to make sure our DC is high enough. And don't worry, even when we don't have this weapon active, we still get this buff. This staff is sold by Blurg, here in the Myconoid Colony. We also get the benefits of a shield even when it's not in our hand, so might as well equip one. I went with the Adamantine Shield, which grants a +2 to AC, sends an enemy reeling when they miss us with a melee attack, gives us crit immunity, which is redundant with our armor, but also grants us the shield blow reaction, giving us a chance to knock an enemy prone when they hit us with a melee attack. Knocking an enemy prone is great, as it ends that enemy's turn and lets you move away without provoking an opportunity attack from them. As with Melf's first staff, we gain all the benefits from this shield, even when we don't have it at hand. This shield can be crafted using the same steps as the Adamantine armor, minus having to fight the Guardian again. You'll just need the shield mold, which can be found here in Grimforge, and more mithril ore, which can be found here. Now for the weapons we'll actually be using, let's dual wield a couple of +1 hand crossbows. We don't have the 2-weapon fighting style, so we won't add our dex to our offhand damage, but this lets us weaponize our bonus action for a bit more damage. Just note, you can't use any of your arcane shot options with your offhand attack. You can find these hand crossbows at various vendors throughout Act 1, but I got mine from Damon in the Emerald Grove and Dareth Bonecloak in the Myconoid Colony. And like always, we want to pay a visit to Auntie Ethel to make a deal with her in her lair and get a clump of her hair. Pick the dexterity option and use it to get our dex to 18. You can find Ethel here in the Riverside Tea House. At character level 6, we'll multi-class, taking a level in Warlock. We'll get a single Warlock spell slot, which recharges on a short rest. For our cantrips, let's pick up Friends, and I'm not talking about the TV show. This spell gives us advantage on charisma checks. Just remember, enemies turn hostile when the spell ends on higher difficulties, so just make sure you're not around when that happens. Let's also get Mage Hand for some exploration utility. We'll pick Hexblade for our subclass, granting us Bind Hex Weapon, which won't be of much use to us as it only works with melee weapons. We also get Hexblade's Curse, which lets us curse the target as a bonus action, increasing our damage against them by a number equal to our proficiency bonus, and increasing our crit range against them by 1. And if the target perishes, you regain 1 hit point, which would of course proc Broodmother's Revenge. For first level spells, let's pick up Shield, a great defensive reaction, increasing our AC by 5 for a whole round when we would otherwise be hit by an attack. And we also want Hex, which we can apply to an enemy as a bonus action, granting us an extra 1d6 necrotic damage against them, and giving them disadvantage on ability checks of our choice. We'll go over another spell we want to concentrate on when we get to equipment, but this is good to have as a backup. At character level 7, we're back to Fighter, where we get another feat. Let's use that to raise our dex by 2, getting it to 20. At character level 8, we'll be a 7th level Fighter. Our number of arcane arrows increases to 7. We get Magic Arrow, making all of our ranged attacks magical, which is redundant since we're already using magical weapons. And we'll get Curving Shot. When you miss with a magical ranged attack, you can use your bonus action to redirect that attack to the nearest enemy. We'll also get to pick another arcane shot option. Pick what you like best, but I went with Bursting Arrow for the AoE. For equipment in Act 2, we'll pick up the Cloak of Protection, which bumps up our AC and saving throws by 1. This cloak is sold by Quartermaster Tally, here at Last Light Inn. Let's swap out the Adamantine Splint Armor for Dwarven Splint Mail. This will raise our AC by 1, our strength saves and checks by 1, and though the damage reduction from Adamantine Splint Armor is better, that +2 to our con score is too good to pass up. Now our constitution is 18. This armor is sold by Lan Tarv, here at Moonrise Towers. After unlocking his special inventory by talking to Zrel, we'll replace our Gloves of Archery with the Flawed Helldusk Gloves, boosting our strength saves by 1 and our weapon damage by 1d4 fire. Now, you can only get these if Damon survives Act 1, and he gives it to you after you give him 3 pieces of Infernal Iron. You can find him here at Last Light Inn. During the main quest line of Act 2, we'll come across a ring called Killer Sweetheart. Once per day, after we defeat a creature, we can turn 1 attack into a crit, even if it would otherwise miss. This is another great one for boss battles, so swap Caustic Band out for this when necessary. You can find Killer Sweetheart after completing the self-same trial here in the Gauntlet of Shar. At the end of Act 2, let's ditch the Adamantine Shield for Kethric's Shield. We are giving up the reeling mechanics and crit immunity, but in exchange, we're getting advantage on dex saves, and, most importantly, another +1 to our arcane shot DC. You can obtain this by looting Kethric after your final confrontation with him. For our ranged weapons, let's swap out the double hand crossbows for the Darkfire Shortbow. This gives us a +2 to attacks and damage, fire and cold resistance, and lets us cast the Haste spell. This concentration spell gives us +2 to AC, advantage in dexterity saves, which we already have thanks to Kethric's Shield, increased movement speed, and 1 additional action per turn. That additional action can be an attack, but it doesn't gain the benefit of extra attack on honor mode. Just keep in mind, when the spell ends, you become lethargic, meaning you can't do anything for a whole round. You'll want to cast this spell during your pre-combat buff routine instead of guidance as often as possible. But because you can only cast this spell with this weapon once per long rest, if you want to get the most out of it, be sure to stock up on camp supplies. Like the Flawed Helldusk Gloves, you can get the Darkfire Shortbow from Dammon. Let's also make sure to get the Drakethroat Glaive. We won't be equipping this for combat, but we do want access to Draconic Elemental Weapon. This concentration free spell lasts all day, letting you buff a weapon of your choice, granting it a +1 to attack rolls, and an additional 1d4 elemental damage of your choice. The way you want to use this is, at the start of your day, equip this and drop your bow, cast this spell targeting your bow on the ground, and voila, now your main weapon is buffed. Just remember to re-equip your staff and shield when you're done. As for which damage types to choose, I would typically go with acid as few enemies are resistant or immune to it, but cold and lightning are both good if you want to take advantage of the vulnerabilities granted by the wet condition. This item is sold by Roa Moonglow, here at Moonrise Towers. And there's one last thing we want to get in Act 2, the Resonance Stone. We don't need to equip this. As long as it's in our inventory, it grants all creatures within 30 feet of us the Steeped in Bliss condition, granting advantage on physical checks, disadvantage on mental saves, and most importantly, vulnerability to psychic damage, doubling the psychic damage of our Shadow Arrow. These buffs and debuffs also apply to us and our allies, so keep that in mind when fighting enemies that deal psychic damage, or when you need to succeed on an important mental saving throw. You can find the Resonance Stone here, in the Mind Flayer colony. At character level 9, we'll hit Fighter 8, and get another feat. Like last time, let's go with ability improvement, this time buffing our wisdom by 2, again protecting that important save. When we hit character level 10, we'll take our 9th level of Fighter, where we gain Indomitable, allowing us to re-roll failed saves. At character level 11, our 10th Fighter level grants us a total of 10 Arcane Arrows, and another Arcane Shot choice. Again, pick what you like, but I went with Enfeebling to reduce enemy damage output. And finally, at character level 12, we reach the Promised Land, Fighter 11. Here, we get improved extra attack, letting us make 3 attacks with our action. So when we're hasted, that's 3 from our action, 1 from our hasted action, and 3 from our action surge, for a grand total of 7 attacks. And if you've seen my other BG3 videos, you should know the drill by now. We're headed to the Mirror of Loss to interact with it and select the Thief memory, getting a +2 to Dex for a total of 22. You can find the mirror here, in the Chamber of Loss, inside the House of Grief, in the Lower City. For equipment in Act 3, let's replace Cloak of Protection with Cloak of the Weave, giving us a free casting of Absorb Elements once per short rest, but more importantly, it increases our Arcane Shot DC by another +1. This cloak is sold by Helsik, at the Devil's Fee, here, in the Lower City. We want the Bhaalist Armour. This light armor lets us add our full dexterity modifier to our AC for a total AC of 22. We get +2 to initiative, and the main reason why we want this is for the aura that makes all enemies within 10 feet vulnerable to piercing damage. So with Shadow Arrow as our primary shot, we're doubling our psychic damage, and now with this armor, we're doubling our piercing damage. Just note, 10 feet is not a great distance, and you get disadvantage on range attacks if you're too close, so you want to land somewhere between 10 feet and 8.5 feet from your foe. Further, and they won't be in the aura, and closer, you'll get disadvantage on the shot. This need for precision placement is why we want it fleet of foot. It'll take some practice to get it right, but if you're playing on PC, mouse and keyboard give you greater precision. And trust me, it's worth it. Look at all this damage. To get this armor, you'll need to become an unholy assassin during the main quest line to unlock the vendor, Echo of Abazagal. For gloves, we want the Craterflesh Gloves. They up our strength saves by 1, and deal an additional 1d6 force damage when we crit, and this damage is DRS, meaning arcane shot damage is added a second time when we crit, as you can see here. And, as of the recording of this video, this even works on honor mode. Combo these gloves with our 2 guaranteed crits per day from Killer Sweetheart and Luck of the Far Realms to eliminate high HP targets with ease. You'll find these gloves in the same place you got the Bhaalist Armour. Let's replace Mel's first staff with Rhapsody. This dagger has a feature called Scarlet Remittance, which increases your attack rolls, damage, and arcane shot DC by 1 for each enemy you defeat, to a maximum of 3, getting your arcane shot DC all the way up to 20. In addition, when you're at 3 stacks, you can consume them as an action to heal, or as a bonus action to either give a target disadvantage on your next spell, or make your next successful attack deal crit damage. You can loot this dagger off of Cazador, whom you'll meet at the end of Astarion's questline in Act 3, here in Cazador's dungeon, in his palace in the lower city. And last but certainly not least, we want to replace the Darkfire Shortbow with Gontr Mael, a truly legendary longbow. It has a chance of inflicting Guiding Bolt on a target you hit with it, granting advantage on the next attack against that target. It glows, which is kinda cool, and has a +3 bonus to attacks and damage, and lets you cast Celestial Haste on yourself. This works exactly like the regular Haste spell, but only lasts half as long, which is no big deal as it should last the whole combat anyway. And in spite of what the tooltips say, in my playtesting, when this spell ends, you do not become lethargic. This bow also grants you a special attack called Bolt of Celestial Light, dealing an additional 1d8 radiant damage, and causing your subsequent attacks with this weapon to deal an additional 1d4 radiant damage, on top of possibly frightening the target. You can loot this bow from the Steel Watcher Titan, who you can fight at the end of the Disable the Steel Watch quest, here in the Steel Watch Foundry, in the lower city. Now let's see how this build performs, shall we? We'll start things off by using Hexblade's Curse with our bonus action. If we didn't already have advantage, we'd probably want to start with Seeking Arrow, but instead let's start with Bolt of Celestial Light to set up that radiant damage. Follow that with Shadow Arrow. We normally use Luck of the Far Realms and Killer Sweetheart here to maximize our psychic damage, but since our target's paralyzed, there's no need. We'll keep burning through our arcane arrows with Shadow Arrow, Action Surge for 3 more attacks, but we only need 2 more for this fiend. So that, fellow adventurers, was the Spellslinger build for Baldur's Gate 3. Give it a try for yourself. And if you enjoyed what you saw here today, please like, comment, and subscribe to Min-Maxer's Paradise, the place for build guides for your favorite role-playing video games. Thanks for watching. Till next time.